The proactive software is built upon several components, materialized by various different portals. In total, we have 4 main portals and sub-portals inside for the left one, which is automation dashboard. And access to these portals is basically tied to the kind of user that we have of the software. So if you are, let's say, what we call a citizen data scientist, which basically you are going to submit some computations without going into details of what the computation is made of, without creating yourself complex workflows, you will most likely access only the automation dashboard and maybe scheduler portal. If you are an expert data scientist, where you might want to design your own workflows and publish it to others, you will access the automation dashboard. You will eventually access API, programmatic user interface in various languages, Workflow Studio to design workflows, scheduler to submit your workflows, and eventually resource manager to monitor where your workflows are being executed. Now, if you are an admin, if you are a system admin, you will not really, in general, design the workflows yourself, let other people do it, but you will most likely monitor the activity on the proactive scheduler interface and the resource manager interface. You will also do some configuration on the server and eventually creating a group of resources in the resource manager. So proactive software is being used worldwide with many important references, such as CNES, such as Safran, such as Komatsu, which is a IoT computer company, L'Oréal, INRA, which is currently inside this training, CEA. So we have several important customers using our solution already. The key features of proactive is the idea to have workflow, to be able to design workflow and to make them scale on a dedicated infrastructure, to work with lower level native schedulers such as Slurm, PBS, LSF, and to work also with on-premise machines or clusters, cloud instances, and even edge devices. In terms of feature, we provide a comprehensive set of APIs, starting from programming level interface APIs up to REST APIs for integration with, for example, other portals. We have different portals for various kinds of users, and eventually new kind of users such as citizen data scientist or expert data scientist. We support containers, especially through some integration with Docker, Singularity, or Postman. We can as well deploy on-demand services for the execution of a workflow or a set of workflow, such as starting the deployment of a PostgreSQL or of a database, PostgreSQL, MySQL, etc. And we have an efficient solution for doing various kinds of machine learning computations, such as overall RDMA. And in general, Proactive is an open and extensible platform. Regarding the various portals that we have, so there is the first portal is called the Automation Dashboard. It contains a set of sub-portals, which are the Proactive Catalog, Proactive Cloud Automation, called here as PaaS, the Job Planner, the CloudWatch, and Analytics. We will see in this current session how these portals can be used. We have the second portal is a ProActive Studio, is something like integrated development environment to build and develop workflows. We have the ProActive Scheduler, which is the portal to monitor in-depth activity of workflows execution, such as log output, results, streaming output of all users. And we have the resource managers, which allows to monitor the infrastructure deployment on either native scheduler or cloud instances, and also allows from the portal itself to deploy new resources. Finally, we have a set of API available in various languages, which is REST. REST kind of API for all kind of microservices, command line interface, Java interface, Python, R, MATLAB, and GraphQL. So in order to connect to the portals, for those who have access to the VPN and manage to open the main interface, you can connect to the link provided here. And regarding your credentials, it will be your last name in lowercase and the first element of your last name if you have a composed last name. And the password is Activeeon 2020, Activeeon with 2E. So can you guys try to connect to the portals for the people who have access to the VPN? So in order to connect to the portal, you need to click on one of the products here. So I will show it to you. Sorry. It's a bit difficult with the. Galik, do you know how I can make that small? I don't know how to do it.
What do you mean?
Okay, I got it. Just to move it, because I could not reach my browser. Fine. So that's the main page. And for example, I'm going to click here on the automation dashboard. I guess I'm already connected, but let's see. Okay. So I'm going to use my last name and password. And it should open the portal. So what we're going to cover today is a general overview of the various portals and the various services. It's a general overview. We will not get into details. Tomorrow, what we're going to do is a hands-on session, writing some small workflows and executing in the infrastructure with explanation of the concept of workflows, and as well some meta scheduling using Slurm.
Okay. Okay, so as Fabien said in the introduction, so ProActive solution propose multiple web portal and interface with different feature and different objective, and this portal are intended to different kind type of users. So depending on the role of each population, we can parameterize the permission and the access to of each one of these portals. So during this training, we will present 9 portals. So the first one we name Workload Automation. So it's the main or the entry portal of our solution, and it's dedicated mainly to the let's say citizen, data scientist or operator, whose their role is to trigger manually the execution of the workflow, track its execution and monitor if there are error or some issues and report them. And also it can also have an access to many statistics and valuable information to see the history of the whole execution. So it's kind of a high-level portal. So, so the definition, as I said, so the workflow automation provides a simple view for end user. So what we mean by end user, so user that not obliged to know the technical details behind the design and the implementation of the workflow. So their role is just to submit ready to use, to be used workflows. So those workflows were validated by the dev team and then published to the catalog. And also they can follow up while hiding the workflow's complexity. So how it's look like? So this portal is accessible via this URL. So if you want, you can just go to the automation dashboard and click on the workflow automation subview, which is in the left side here, as you can see. So, sorry. So this is a screenshot of an existing, let's say, a state of one of our TRI platforms. So just now to give you details about each part. So the upper part, here we can see that we have several numbers and statistics about the number of pending jobs, for example, current job, past job, and also we can have some charts and graphical view to see the number of cancelled job, failed, killed, issues also, and this statistics and metrics are banding to the current user. I mean the user which is connecting to the portal. But we can, of course, switch this toggle button to see the statistic of all users, all the connected users to the platform. In the middle, we have three, let's say, tables. So the first table lists the pending jobs, so jobs which are in the queue of the scheduler waiting to be scheduled and executing in the compute resources. So we can see here if we have, let's say, a list of waiting jobs. The second table contains the current jobs, so the jobs which are executed and distributed in the available infrastructure. So here, and we can see on runtime the progress of this execution and the state if there are issues or any kind of problems. And the final one, the final table here, we list the history of all executed jobs. So we have several information. So the ID, the user, the name, and also we can even access to the output of the execution. Of course, it's each user can access only to each job. So we cannot see the output of other user executions. And in this part, so it's like an access to the catalog. So the catalog, we will see later on more details about it. But here, the user, the citizen data scientist can, from this location, select the workflow to be executed. So there is a drop down list here. So he select a bucket. It's kind of folder composed of a set of workflows ready to be executed. And then you click on the workflow that you want to execute and submit it manually to the scheduler. Okay, if you have any question, please do not hesitate to ask me. I don't see them here if you write them, but do not hesitate to ask me directly questions. Thank you. As I said, the user can access directly to the catalog of workflows. So when he select a bucket, so here basic examples, he can select one single workflow to be executed from this catalog, and using the right click, the bottom of the mouse, so he has several options. So he can view the details. So it's kind of metadata information related to the workflow. So the bucket name, the description, the last commit, and so on. He can see also all revisions of this workflow. So as you know, during the construction of and the design of the workflow, we can have several versions of its life cycle, let's say, and we can commit when we decide that this version is, for example, is valid. We can make a commit, but we have a total, let's say, control of the traceability of all commits. So as you can see here, we have the commit time, and we have the message that we put, and the user. And we have the capability to restore a version if we want to come back to an old one. We can also open this workflow on the studio if you want to see how it looks like, the code, so it's the implementation, and see, for example, which language and the other characteristic of the workflow. But this feature, normally it's not allowed to citizen data scientists, as it's not their role to go to the studio and modify the workflow. So this feature is, let's say, controlled. If you are allowed, you can go to the studio. If you are not, so it will not provide anything. And you can submit, as a last action, you can submit directly this workflow to the scheduler. So here, as you can see, we selected the native task, and by clicking on the green button, you submit it directly to the scheduler. And we have another option to submit the workflow. It's by a left click. So it's, let's say, a shortcut to submit the workflow. And when you submit the workflow, if it contains variables, so these variables are like parameters at the workflow level that you can keep their default values, as we have here, for example, 90, or you can change them if you want regarding your current execution. So you check the validity before submitting. So if you got green or the good message that your workflow is valid, you can submit it directly to the catalog, to the scheduler. And finally, when you submit the workflow, you can track and monitor the execution on runtime of the workflow, of course, by knowing the ID of your job. So here, and you have the other information related to the submission, and you can see the progress. Here we have a single task workflow. So upon the submission, it's 0 on 1. So it's sorry, there is an echo. Okay, and you can see also the state of the job. So here we have in error. So we have, let's say, an issue in the execution, and the number of issues is 1. So here we need to investigate why. So to know the reason or the root of the error, you have to click here to go to the scheduling portal to see the logs and the output of the execution. Or, and this is a new feature that we added recently, you can directly from the past job execution output, you can access directly to the output of the execution and see, let's say, the incident and what is the type of the error, and report that, and just send an email or notification to the dev team to investigate and to correct the issue. Okay, so now I will move to the platform to just show you how we can make all these steps that I described. So I will connect to the automation dashboard here. So I will put my credentials. And here, as you can see, so just have a small screen. So here, as I told, we have a first part showing the statistic. For now, I don't have any job submitted and the 3 tables and access, direct access to the catalog. So here I will get and I will select this workflow. So I will click on it. Sorry. And here I can either keep, can you mute please? Okay, so here I can either keep the default values, or I can change them, of course, if I want. So here, for example, I would 100, can select, for example, 2 number of lights like that. I check my workflow. As you can see, check success. So he's valid. The XML of the workflow is valid. So it can be submitted to the scheduler, but it doesn't mean that it will succeed. This is another story. So I will submit it. So I have the ID, and you will see here, it will appear in the pending maybe, or directly if there is no pending jobs, it will appear directly here. And as you can see here, 8-9 progress. It's very quick because the platform is very powerful. And now it is in the 3rd table, the past jobs. So I can see the output, as you can see. That is the output of my execution. So hello. Okay, do you have any question at this stage? If, I don't know, if you
want, you can actually submit
another one?
yourself the variables propagation workflow using
Okay.
this interface to test it.
Okay.
Uh,
Distributed computing, this one?
no, actually, I was suggesting the participant to try to submit it.
Okay. Okay. Or any other workflow from the bucket. Here, as you can see, we have drop down list. So this is ready to be used workflows. Not all of them, of course, because we have some templates and some basic tasks that can be executed separately. They have to be combined with the other tasks. So for example, if I go to machine learning workflows, for example, maybe it's
I mean, I suggest we stick for a simple example now.
Okay, okay. So we'll stay in basic examples.
Yeah. And
bucket, and here you can choose any kind of, for example, maybe this one, it will provoke an error. Let's try it. So we have in error, I will submit. We will see here when it appears, maybe the status will change from running to in error, and the number of issues will, yeah, as you can see here. So we have an issue, and the execution is interrupted because we chose a kind of strategy to stop the execution if some error occur during the execution, as you can see here. So not switch to the scheduling portal, because this is not the aim of the of today. And here, as you can see, we have an error. So the number of or the content of this graphical chart changed dynamically. So we have a refresh mechanism every, I think, I don't know, 20 seconds or something like that.
I just want to add that contrary to what Amine said, not all workflows here can be used out of the box. Some
Yes.
require some dependencies. Most of them, yes, but not all of them.
Yes, not all of them.
That's why I think we should stick to to a few workflows for now.
Yes. Okay, and here I will maybe switch to the other mode. Here I can see the execution of all users, as you can see here. So we can retrieve the history of the entire scheduler. So all executions can be displayed in the interface. And the statistic, of course, will change accordingly. Okay. If you don't have any questions, we can now move to the second chapter or second portal. Okay. Sorry, why? Okay. Okay, so the second portal, namely catalog portal. So it provides storage and versioning of workflows and other proactive objects. So for your information, we don't have only workflows. We have also we have other objects like scripts, rules, calendars, and so on. So scripts can be referenced inside the workflows. Rules, it's kind of event-based scheduling, which they are used in the in other portal, in other component of proactive calendars. They are used to plan the execution of workflows and so on. So this object, let's say, are grouped in buckets. So buckets, it's a repository or folder that contains a set of objects which have a common, let's say, team, or they are belonging to a single project or a single service inside an organization. So it's up to you to define the buckets and how you group your objects in general. Okay, so a bucket it's a simply folder which contain one or more catalog objects. Okay, so you can access to the this interface. So here, so it's the first subview in this left column here. So the catalog, so as you can see, is composed of let's say 3 main area. So in the right side here, when you select an object or workflow mainly, you can see different information or metadata information related to the workflow. So his name, its name, the description, the project name, the kind, documentation URL if you want to associate a documentation to a workflow, the last update, the user that commit this workflow, and also the dependency we can have, let's say, between workflows or inside workflows, several dependencies that we can see them here and navigate between them. The default variables, so the variable at the level of workflow and their values. So all kind of information that needed to understand how this workflow is designed. Also, we have this bottom. We will see that later on. We can switch to the graphical mode by activating this bottom to see how this workflow looks like. So how many tasks. So graphically, we can see that. And in the middle, so here for a given bucket, so the list of bucket is here. If you click on a bucket, you can see the content of the bucket in the middle. So as you can see, these workflows are organized inside the bucket by project. So when you put, for example, in the description of the workflow, basic machine learning and one basic machine learning, so it will appear here in this level of the visualization, and all in this side you can manage this object, so you can copy paste or cut, or you can delete, you can download one or several objects. You can also upload directly files, XML files, or any kind of files inside the bucket itself. And we have two kinds of reports. We have the, let's say, general report, all objects in PDF, so with their metadata. And we have a call graph report which display the dependencies among this object, so inside a single bucket. Okay. And in the left side, so as I said, we have the list of buckets and the number or the cardinal of each one. So the number of objects inside. And also we have the possibility to add a new bucket and to change its description term of user groups. So as you know, when you create a bucket, you can add let's say a group of user to allow people belonging to this group to access to this bucket. It's a mechanism, it's a kind of airbag, so role-based access control mechanism to restrict the access to bucket to particular users. And at the end, in the top, as you can see here, we have filters. So you can filter by kind. So here we will see the list. So it's a drop-down list. You can also filter by the content type. And you can, of course, look or search for a particular object. So you have just to write the name of the object, and if it exists, so it will filter the rest of the object. Okay, I think that I didn't forget anything. So I will go to the practical, let's say, part. So here I will switch to the demo mode. So I will go back to my so ProActive connection. So here I will click on the catalog, and what I will do, I will select one of these workflows, for example, the distributed here. And as you can see, I can see the different information related to the workflow. So this information are added by the dev team, of course. So they depends on how the user of group of users implemented the workflow. And here, as you can see, he's calling several scripts, and I can switch, as I said, to the graphical mode like that. So here, as you can see, it's composed of several tasks with some dependencies. I can also directly here access to the content of the workflow, so the XML, if I'm allowed, of course. I can, for example, here make a fake change. I will not do anything. I will commit to see the versioning, so V2, for example, like that. So, okay, I will go back to my workflow. Maybe this one. Oops. Yes. So I will see the, as you can see here. So I made the commit. So this is the time of the commit, the message, and it was me. So I can see the history of different version, and I can restore. For example, I will do like that. I will restore. And when I restore, it's another commit. Okay. And now what will I do? So I will add a new bucket and I will try to populate it with some workflows. So I will click on this button. So for example, I will call it HP demo. So here we have a user group. I can access only to user group as I'm connecting with Louati, which is a member of user group. So I will associate this bucket to user group. So here my bucket is empty. So what I can do, I can copy paste. For example, I will select these three, for example. Sorry. Okay, so copy and go here, paste. As you can see, I can copy paste between workflows, or I can even, for example, here, I will go back to basic example bucket. I will, for example, select those two. I will download. So in my, and then I can upload them like that. So I will select a file. So the type, I need to validate and check the kind of the object. So here we have several, as you can see, different kinds. So for my case, it's workflow standard, like that. And it's a zip, and I will upload it. As you can see, it's uploaded here. And I can do that with the other, with any other new bucket like that. And now, if I want to change, for example, for some reason, the associated group, I can do it. So here I click on the edit button and I can change, for example, here it was user. So I will update the bucket like that. And if I want to delete a bucket, so I need to delete all the object inside before deleting the bucket. So here I need to select all these objects, delete them, and then now I can delete the bucket. As you can see, the bucket is deleted. I think I make an overview of basic and main features of the catalog. I don't know. Yes, maybe I will finish with the filters. So here we have several kinds. So if I want to look for only calendars, let's say, I will do like that. So as you can see, we have 9 calendars in the catalog, entire catalog. If I want to stay on the workflow standard, and here I'm looking for a particular, let's say, scripts, kind of, for example, only Pythons. I don't have, maybe, no, maybe it's not a good example. Maybe I will look for, PCA workflows. And alls. So as you can see, we have 2 buckets containing such kind of workflows. And if I want to look for MySQL, for example, or Docker, so here, so I have 4. So it's a classical way to look for particular objects inside any, let's say, storage database or any kind of catalog like ours. So I think I showed you the main features of the catalog. I don't know if you have questions before moving to the next chapters and next portals. Fabien, do you think that I covered the main feature?
Yeah, I think you covered the main features of workflow automation and catalog.
Yes, so if you don't have any questions, we can move to the next.
Yes. I mean, maybe you can show the how to access in automation dashboard
Mohamed
the result of a job I have launched, the image classification, for instance.
Okay, I will. Okay, good idea. So I will launch a deep learning workflows, which is the train image classification. So this one. So I will not change anything. I think it works with the default values like that. I will submit it. So it's a deep learning workflow which aim to classify an input data set using a deep learning algorithm. So here it's ongoing. We need to just wait a little bit to be able to see the result of the execution. Okay, so the executions are finished successfully, so we don't have any issues, and we can directly from this portal access to the result and preview this result in HTML format. So we click here. As we can see, so it's a classification of ants and bees. So as you can see, we can see how the prediction is done. So it's a good way to have quick access to the result right away from the automation, the workflow automation portal. Okay, so I think that's all from my side. I will let Mohamed take over the rest and present the job analytics portal.
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Could you stop sharing, please?
Yes.
Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Amine. Here's Mohamed speaking from Activeeon. So now we are going to visit the job analytics interface of ProActive. So by definition, the job analytics view is portal provides a web interface that allows users to visualize, monitor, and analyze executed jobs, and also to analyze the inputs and the job results. So this functionality of ProActive job analytics is very useful for users that generally run the same workflow. We have like the same workload many times. For example, let's suggest an example. We want to train a model with different data, and then we would like to check how the algorithm behaved according to the input data. So we check the results. So yeah, so I'm going just to go quickly through this portal, but Andrews will present tomorrow afternoon a use case with AutoML and to show you more the job analytics with a real use case. So the overview of the picture is as follow. You can go actually on the left-hand side, you can analytics and job analytics, and it will pop up this this window. So first thing to do is to look for a workflow that I want to analyze, to monitor, to see what how it went if all the execution were run fine and analyze the results. So I specify the different properties of my workflow, like the job status, the workflow name, the project, if I want to check only my jobs or other user jobs, and also the submission time. So once that is done, so we have different properties set, so we search, and this will generate different metrics, widgets, and the table of jobs. So in the top part of this interface, we have like a summary of the total jobs, some metrics related to the issues. If there are issues, they will show up here. If there are the metrics related to the duration. And then just below, we have three kind of widgets. So the duration of every instance of a workflow, then the variables of every job and their results over here. And at the bottom, we have the different execution, the raw data of the related to the jobs and so on. So, for example, if you have different executions, it's good to see, for example, why the job duration is not the same. If it's now like in our focus, or we want to retrieve the best instance that perform the most, like it has the less duration than the others. So it depends on the needs of the user actually. So I'm going quickly on the portal to see how it works. So automation dashboard. So come here in analytics, job analytics. And then here I already prepared an example. I have variable propagation on different variables for my profile, my jobs. And then I run this example today. So just search for it. It will generate these charts. There is no issues as it is a very simple example. We can display different kinds of graphics here. You can show, yeah. It's very useful when you have like a large results. It's better to have like the line and you can switch to have a better visualization. You can also enlarge the results. Here we have just two executions of the workflow. So for example, here we have this job ID and this job ID. So this one took 15 seconds, this one took 9 seconds. The variables are not the same. You can see the variable values here. And then for the results, you can see the result is not the same, although it's the same because I did some modification to see the difference. So yeah, and the table show the record of the jobs. You can export this. You can filter by according to your needs. Export this as a CSV. By maybe, for example, if you want to get the job execution of ProActive and exploit them using another visualization tool, like another platform. You can export all the data from ProActive. Like you parse it or you do whatever you want so that you can exploit it later on in other environments. Yeah, that's okay. So it's just quick overview. Tomorrow, Andrews will give you more details about it. Okay. So now, so far, do you have any questions? Don't hesitate to interrupt me if you need me to apply some actions. Otherwise, don't hesitate to use the chat. I will refresh. Don't know why you made that. Did someone change the permission for the slides? It's fine. Okay, so here we are. So now we move to the scheduling portal. The scheduling portal. Actually, let me remind you what Amine presented in Fabien. So basically, we have like a way from automation dashboard for the high level user, for data scientists, people that are not very expert with debugging, etc. To how to run the workflows and submit them to the scheduler. In Workload Automation, you saw that, Amine showed that we can see logs, we can see past jobs, running jobs, etc. But we don't have too much details. Like, for example, we don't have like the status about the tasks that run within the job. We don't have like the the submission time, the building time. We don't have this many details. So scheduling portal is the perfect is the place where the administrators and expert users can use in order to see what is going on once we submit a job. And especially when we have like an issue, we want to investigate more the server logs that we don't have access in the automation dashboard. We want to see what's going on in details. Also I wanted to mention that a job, we use too much the term job. And in ProActive, job is an instance of a workflow. So a workflow might have many instances and eventually many execution, many jobs. So the automation dashboard, the scheduling portal is accessible through this link here at this button, or from the main interface, the third button from the left. I invite everyone to access to this portal so that they can play with it with different functionalities. So the portal is composed mainly of three parts. So as you can see here, so in the next slides, I'm going to details every section of this portal. So the first section I'm going to detail is the one in the top part here, the top part of the portal, and it contains the list of all executed jobs through the time. So every record here is an instance, it's a job. So a job has different characteristics, different properties like ID, the state, issue, if it has issues or not, by who it was executed, the progress, priority, etc. We can filter, we can sort actually according to different properties, and so on. So we'll see later in the demo. The next section I'm going to detail is the one on the bottom left. So once we select a job, we can go to this view, the bottom left, and see the details. And for instance, here we have a different granularity to monitor the execution of the job, which is at the task level. So for the selected job, I can monitor and see the different details of the different tasks that compose it. So here we can see that it's running. So we have this running, this task is running. We have already finished some tasks, duration per task, etc. The next tab, just close to it, next to it, we can see the runtime visualization of the workflow of the job. And the workflow we can see here, the green one is the running task, and so on and so on. If it it failed, one of the tasks failed, it will be red, for example, here. So we have just to select a task running and see visualization at runtime. So now I'm gonna explain some parts of the third section, which is in the bottom right, as you can see here. So for the selected workflow, sorry, for the selected job, we have different infos that I mentioned in the beginning. So apart the classical properties, we have like these metrics that might interest some users. Depends on the use case, of course. I want to see like the submission time, the start time, finish time, how much it was pending. Pending, it means like it was looking for resources and there is no nodes, there is no resources, so it stay like on hold or pending. The duration, description. We can see also job variables, job results. Here's the job variables. Here's as Amine showed in the workflow from automation. We can see the variable values here, and also the generic information is kind of metadata attributes of the workflow. We can see also the job results, but don't have a slide for it. But we can one of the most important parts of the scheduling portal, as I mentioned earlier, is the log, is the output. So there is 2 levels of displaying logs. We have like do you need, for example, to show the logs of the selected job or for the tasks? There are 2 levels. And also, if the job is still running and didn't finish yet, want to see live logs at real time during the execution of the workflow, I can check out here this checkbox and to see live logs. Also, yeah, we can select error or like standard logs, etc. Here's another level, higher level of display logs, which is at the server level. So the logs here show if there are any issues with the server, of like the node, like the task didn't start because of some issues on the server, etc. Here you can see it's a bit small, but you have like a button filter. This is very useful when you have like 1,000 and millions of jobs, because yeah, it could grow very fast, and you need to fetch like a specific job in the history. You can use it to specify some filters according to your needs, like for example, the workflow of Amine or Fabien, or like by time or status, so that you can filter this very huge list. Another feature we can do, as we saw from the catalog, we can submit to the workflow to the scheduler. We can do it from the workflow automation, but also from the scheduler itself. We have a dedicated button from it here, submit job. You can select the source if it's like from a file that you exported from an XML or from the catalog. You specify the variable values and so on. You submit it. It will come up in the top of the list here. So yes. Do you have it's clear for you? Do you have any questions? So the scheduling portal, I can access to it through it. I invite everyone to, actually I can know if because we can see the list of jobs and so I invite everyone to go here. And I think maybe you won't be able to see the details of all users, only your jobs. So you have to run some jobs before, because you have a user account. You don't see like, you're not going to see the details of the job. But for me, I have an admin account. I can see all details of all jobs.
If you want to restrict the portal to your jobs only, you can check the My Jobs.
Yeah. But I will leave it like this unchecked. So So yeah, we can. I will go through some of them, some of the features I showed in the slide. So visualization is over here. The job info, you can see there. We have here from Ansari, we have like the details of his job. And then there is no result of the job. We can check out the logs. So here we have, I will click, it's finished job. So we can click on finish it task output to see all the logs of the job. I can use the filter that I mentioned earlier to filter some of the jobs according to like I want to see my jobs. Containers apply. You can see we can select any one of the. I invite everyone to play with these filters. What else? Maybe the task centric. Here, another view of the scheduling project, which is based on the task. It shows, instead of having the jobs, it lists all the tasks of all jobs here. And you have the different information regarding every task. Is there anything else Fabien can show? Maybe you can export the execution as an XML. I can open this workflow in Studio, and if I am a user, if I am a developer, for example, I want to edit something, I can resubmit it, define priority. If it is paused, I can resume it. I can pause an execution. I have different actions. I can kill a job. I can remove it. So here I'm going to clear. So here it gets red because this job is has some issues. I can see the tasks. There is only one task in this job which is faulty. I can select task to see the logs of this task. So there is an exception. So one would inspect and investigate why this has failed. I can also forget that as you can see here, we have 5,000 jobs, more than 5,000 jobs since the platform is up. So one of the things is to do that we have like a setting here that will limit the jobs page size at 50. We can configure it, like put I want to show like 500 jobs per page, and then we can do navigate through pagines and to older jobs. Here I will see the 50 older jobs, and then I go also to the oldest jobs. It will show me the first jobs that were run in the beginning. But by default, when you enter the scheduling portal, I don't know if you checked that, the list is sorted by ID, and the new jobs will always be added on the top. There are also different admin. I'm not going to detail that admin functionalities. The table will refresh every amount of seconds, like 5 seconds. 3 seconds, don't remember. We have statistics of the scheduler. This very admin also feature. And that's all. I'm not going to go into the details. So if you want me to try something or want to right now, just tell me. Otherwise, keep the chat to ask a question. Don't hesitate. So I'm going to move forward. So
Mohamed, maybe you can show the streaming output of a job.
Yes.
You can submit from here and show.
Okay, I'm going to resubmit. Answer is true.
Selected job. Too late.
Yeah. Yes, maybe I should take another one that takes time to run. Which
image classification is
this one, right?
Yes.
Okay. There is no variables to define. Resubmit. Streaming output. Yeah, it's now streaming the logs. And you can see here the train image classification is running. Is there anything else I can show for you?
Well, there are many things that you could be shown, but I don't think it's a purpose here to go too much into details unless some people want to have some specific demonstration of some feature.
Yeah, you can also select the columns that you want to show up in the table, or unselect.
Does anyone require some clarification about this interface, or?
I see people running jobs actually. Should I move forward?
I guess so.
Yeah, okay. So now I'm going to move to the next section, next chapter, which is about the notification service. The notification portal, which is actually a sub-view of the automation dashboard, allows the users to subscribe to some specific events. It could be events related to the scheduler or events related to the executions of your workflows. Like for instance, I want to subscribe to every event related to an error jobs. Like I want to get notified whenever I have an error in my execution. I want to get notified whenever I have a scheduler, whenever the scheduler is down, for example. There are many actually events that the user can define, so that instead of going through the scheduler every time to check manually the status of my executions, I can subscribe to some of the events, and we even provide the ability to get notified by email. So you can just run your everything. You don't do any manual intervention. You just prepare the events, the subscription to the event. You configure your email, or like even we provide support to do like a third party. We can use third party notification tools that we could connect them to ProActive, so that you can receive your notification in your preferred tool, and that's all. So I'm going through the different through the interfaces of the notification service. I should put like yeah, sorry. So mainly the notification is here, as you saw for job analytics, catalog of automation, is on the bottom part. And when you click on it, you can see the notifications that you have subscribed to. And before that, first thing to do, as I mentioned in the beginning, is to subscribe to some events. That, and these events depends on the requirements, on your needs. Some people, like, it depends on the profile of the user. Like, some people want to, like, their goal is to debug or to monitor the execution. So maybe they would better subscribe to events related to finished jobs with issues, with errors, etc. And there are other people that want just to be notified when the job is finished, because a job could be executed, for example, for 1 or 2 or 3 days. I don't want to check always the status, because it takes time. I want just to be notified when it's done. Okay, so first thing, I define my subscription. I want a job subscription, which means I define the way I want to be notified if I'm using a portal, which means here, if I want to be notified by email or by another third-party tool, or even SMS. And for the work, I should define the different settings for my notification. So for which workflow, for example, I can specify one or many, for which folder, which is for which bucket, which project, and the events. The events, you can see them here or check them on the portal directly. So we provide all these events. So as you can see, resume it, pause it, finish it with issues, submit it. And it's even at the task level. If I have like one specific task within a workflow that failed, I can, for example, subscribe to task and error. And finally, you can subscribe to only to your jobs or to the group's job. Okay, so this is the first kind of subscription. We see the job subscription, but we provide 2 other kinds of subscription, sorry, which are job planner and scheduler. Job planner, which means I'm going to detail job planner later, but if you plan like an execution and it failed, so you get a notification. And scheduler, which is also important for admin users, admin people, and for example, I get notification here. Sorry, I specify if my, for example, it's frozen. I put all the notification here, for example, if the database is down, etc. Same as for the jobs, I can specify the type of notification. So first thing, we define the subscription. It's fine. We are done with that. So since you validate, you add.
Mohamed, we cannot hear you.
Yes.
Now? Yes. Okay, I don't know what happened. So first thing, I said that it's fine. We define the subscription. So now, since the time that you add this subscription, you will start to get notification if one of the events that you already defined is triggered. So now we switch to this tab. We were in this tab, subscription, the second one. Now we switch to this tab. So now in all here we can see all the notifications that are triggered by the event that you have subscribed to. So a notification, you have an event type here, finish it, the message, the job is finished, and it tells you it's like an info message, job ID 119, native task from the bucket basic example is finished 20 minutes ago, and Boussaa is, which I triggered this event. My workflow actually triggered this event. And we have warning messages, also, for example, for paused, and so on. So now I'm going to show to talk about the validation request, which is another kind of notification. Validation requests are triggered by the workflow tasks themselves. So for example, you have workflow, and at the end you want to be notified. So you add a task at the end of your workflow, which is called validation request. And then you can, once this task is executed, it will pop up a new notification in the notification portal here to ask the user to take a decision. If I want to, for example, to continue the execution, if there are many tasks after it, or like, no, I don't want to continue the execution of the workflow, or abstain. So the user has to, here in this type of notification, has to take a decision and to apply some actions to, that's it. Application notifications are also like validation requests are sent by workflows. And it's just a simple web notification that you are going to receive it here in this application section. And it is triggered by a task within the workflow. Now you can see here some filters, predefined filters. If one has subscribed to different job scheduler and job planner events, notifications, you can filter, you can see only job. I want to see, for example, only notification related to my jobs, or scheduler, and you have the counter here that show the number of notification per section. And also we can filter predefined critical errors, warning, info, and etc. Yeah, so time for demo. So again, I'm going back to automation dashboard. So I'm going to go to notification. I invite all users that have access to platform to go to notification. As I said in the slides, first thing to do is to subscribe to some events. So I'm going to subscribe to some events eventually. As an example, we will take a job event. So you go subscription and jobs. You create a job subscription, a new one. You click here. So by default, you have portal. Email is not configured yet for this machine, but we can do it another time if there are people that are interested to do email notification. For this demo, quick demo, I'm just using the portal. I'm going just to take an example. Here, when you click on this, you have all the workflows that you have in catalog. You can start, you can start typing, grabbing some text like variable, propagation, or like, let's say this one. So it automatically selects the bucket name or project name. We can also subscribe to a bucket. Okay, for example, basic examples. And I want to have like events from any workflow that is part of the bucket basic examples. But for now, I'm going just to select one single workflow. I'm going to take native task Linux, and I want to be notified when it is finished. For my jobs or other people's jobs, it depends on your preferences, and I add the subscription. The subscription is added, it's active. So whenever I submit this job and it gets finished, I can receive an error. So now second, I can add another subscription actually. I'm going to select Windows task. Why? Because actually you don't have Windows nodes, so that means that my job will fail. So what I'm going to do is to just an example to be notified when my job has finished with issues. I'm gonna add the subscription. I have two subscriptions. One should actually trigger an error, and then notification error, and the one should be fine, should be green, an info message, etc. Should we do scheduler, Fabien, or not?
Sorry?
Should
you
we
can submit them. Well, no, not necessarily.
Okay. So now I'm going to submit my jobs that are here. I'm going to do submit to scheduler, submit. It's just a native task. There is nothing inside. And this one, I'm going also to submit it. That will fail. And you can see that I start to get notification here. Something that was not possible before, the subscription. And if I go, okay, I have 2 notifications. I have a job that was an error because it's Windows and we are running on top of Linux. So yeah, it has issues. You can click on it to go to the scheduling portal to see what happened, for example, for this one, etc. Visualize the logs, etc. And for this one, it was just finished with success. You can filter also the notification when you have like thousands of notification. You can filter according to the event, the severity, workflow name, etc. And we have these filters, predefined filters that can be helpful in case you have many notifications.
And finally, you can mark as read.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we can mark all of them as read. Like this one, we can mark as unread manually. We can delete the notification. And if we have many thousands of notifications, we have like a pagination mechanism. You can scroll down, and the more that you scroll down, the more notification that will show up. Yep. So I think that's all for notification. Did someone try to subscribe to some events? I hope so. For the scheduler, yeah, we have many, as I showed you, many events over here. And that's all for the jobs. You can, for the subscription, you can delete the subscription, you edit them. I think that's all. Okay. So now I moved to another service provided by ProActive, which is cloud automation, what we call PCA, ProActive Cloud Automation. Cloud automation is a portal that provides a simple view where the user can deploy, can use managed services like platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, model as a service, and they have a full life, so they can manage the full life cycle of the services and create, deploy, pause, resume, terminate, etc. So for that, we have a dedicated interface where the user can use, and where all the services are located, are stored. The interface is here, and in the bottom here, cloud automation, just above notification. And you have here different sections. So at the right, all the services, the list of services, and here the activated services, and here the workflows that have triggered the services. So on the top also we have some statistics related to the services that are running within ProActive. Like activated services, the services that were activated today, finished services, running jobs, etc. And as I said here, you can manage different actions of every service. You can pause it, you can start it. It depends on the needs. You can browse all the services here. We provide services to database systems, big data platforms, AI platforms. Khalil from Activeeon will show as well, and tomorrow after tomorrow, the Jupyter Lab as a concrete example, how to run the Jupyter Lab from ProActive as a service. And yeah, I'm going just to show quickly how it works on the platform. I'm going to run an example of a service. So again, we go to automation dashboard. In cloud automation over here, I click on it. I see that there is already running services. We can browse here all the list of services, AWS, etc., Cassandra, Elasticsearch, Spark. As you can see, we provide different types of services that can be used by workflows. And for example, I'm going to select the wisdom service as an example. So what I'm going to do is click on it, define some properties related to the service if it has so. By default, this was configured to be working for this example. So I'm going just to
Mohamed,
sorry, yeah.
there is one already running. I didn't see that.
I didn't see which one.
I don't know if the endpoint you chose is
the default one. I can run again. Actually, it works. It's running. The current state is running. And I can access to the endpoint of the service through here. So as you can see, I'm access to Wisdom. Wisdom, just I forgot to mention, is that it's a tool developed by Facebook community to visualize different charts, etc. So I can finish the service, pause it, and you can see that there is like a workflow that triggered this action. But if I, for example, do finish, right? Okay, I execute here. So I finish, stop the execution. So I execute the action. So that will trigger another workflow that is responsible to end this service. And then it will appear in finish jobs when it's, yeah, now it should appear over here.
Mohamed, maybe you can show that when you start a service, you deploy a service, there will be a workflow executed on the scheduler.
Yeah. I deploy again or show the previous one. Yeah, this one first. It has started the Wisdom service, and then it will loop to keep the service alive, and then there's like a specific workflow, kind of workflow to finish the execution of the service. So every action that you take in the PCA, the ProActive Cloud Automation, it is triggered by a workflow that the ProActive team have prepared before, and yeah.
And which can also be customized for a specific environment or a specific installation.
Exactly. So for example, I see like here, it's the same wisdom, so it's still installed because it's looping over here. Yep, and yeah, we see that there is a task looping over here.
So what happens here is that this service is still currently running. The first task of the workflow is deploying the service. And then there is a cron loop which monitors the service, to monitor the service that is still running. This is why the workflow is still running here on stalled, because there is this cron loop which periodically checks that the service is still active.
Do you have any question or we move forward? We have also different, we can see different properties of the service, status, etc. And also I forgot there's some details that history also. We can see in the finished jobs what happened exactly for my job, for example, the wisdom one. We can see that there are two instances that were executed, as Fabien said, one for to start and then the second one to finish the service. Yep, that's it. I move forward to the next slide. So now we are going to present the job planner. Okay, so the job planner is another microservice that ProActive provides, which is useful to users that want to schedule some workflow execution in the future without any manual intervention. So users can plan according to a specific calendar the execution of a specific workflow, one or more workflows. So we will show you how we can do that. It's quite simple. First of here's the overview of the portal. Same always in the automation dashboard and the job planner. So first thing to do is to create a calendar. We can add a calendar from here and the plus button, and then we can specify the different properties of a calendar. Like for example, I want to run my workflow every 10 minutes, like every minute, it depends on the needs. So we can specify the bucket of the calendar where it will be stored, and then the cron expression. So we have a generator over here that you can use a widget, and then you can also specify if you are familiar with the cron expression, we can write right away the expression of the cron. So once the calendar is defined, so next step is to go to the second sub-menu over here, calendar association. So suppose we have like every 10 minutes calendar, I want to associate to this calendar a specific workflow, one or more. So I select my calendar, I click on add a workflow association. I will select the workflow from my database, from my catalog, and then I will add this workflow to this specified calendar. So another step that we can see to make sure that the association is there, we can click on execution planning, select the calendar to see the future executions. Here it lists the future execution. Actually, for every 10 minutes, it will tell you that that I have native task workflow that will run like at 9:20, 9:30, etc. Also, I forgot that I know that there are many people coming from many countries or many cities. So there's also the way the possibility to define the time zone because the time is different from one country and another sometimes. So I go back to calendar definition. I forgot to mention that there is a time zone here, so you can select the scheduling execution according to the time zone that you have defined. You can see it here actually, time zone, for example, here or so. We can also sort the execution here by workflow. Example, for this second flow, here's the execution, or chronologically, and also using a calendar to show the different planet executions. I'm going to do a demo about this. So I'm going again in the automation dashboard. I invite people to do the same thing as well. And ProActive actually provide this default. When we install ProActive, we have this default like templates we can use, or you can use these ones, or you can create your own calendar. And for example, here I can't edit my calendar because it has already some associated workflows. But from my case, what I'm going to do, I'll create with you a new one. I invite you to do the same. I'm going to do also every, I don't know, 1 minute. I can give a description, and then I can either from advanced here, I put the cron expression, or I use the generator over here. I select 1 minute, and then as you can see, we entered in the create mode, so we have to validate or cancel the creation.
Yes. Mohamed, can you give to your name? Can you put your initial? Because if everyone creates a same calendar, it will not work.
1 minute, is it too short, or it's fine?
No, it's okay.
Okay. For the time zone, as you can see, here's all the time zones. You can specify it if you are in the US, for example. Exclusion is when you want to exclude some of the like vacations, like some specific points of time. So you can specify here inclusion, exclusion. Exclusion actually for vacation, for example. And once it's done, we have to create the calendar. So we create it. It's over here. I'm going to next to associate new workflows to my calendar. So I select my calendar at the left side here. I click on the add button, and it will show me the catalog over here, as we show in the other microservices. And we should select one workflow from one of the buckets. So, for example, native task Linux. I click on next. Here, if you have like some variables, you have to put some values for this association. You can define it here. Here, it will just do a ping of 4. And then I confirm association. So my association is created. I have workflow that is associated to every 1 minute calendar. It is association status is planned, but we can deactivate it. For example, I don't want to activate my workflow. I click here and deactivate the association. You can delete it, edit it. You have details of the workflow associated to this one. For 10 minutes, I can add another one. I can do the same, actually, the same workflow. Okay, confirm. So it was added here. So now does this mean? That for every minute and 10 minutes, I will have, for every 1 minute we'll have task Linux, and the same also for every 10 minutes. For execution planning, I can click, for example, like 10 minutes. It will show me all the jobs that will run every 10 minutes. So as you can see, there are many here, many workflows associated to 10 minutes because other people are doing the same thing. I can sort them chronologically and I can see them in the calendar. Another thing that I didn't show in the slide is that the user is able to visualize the past and future execution using a Gantt chart. So first thing to do is that I select, for example, every 10 minutes calendar. I want to show all the execution of every 10 minutes. So as you can see here, it show me first all the workflows that are associated to this calendar. As you can see, there are many, not only mine. And then I can zoom out to see, to better see the future execution. Let's say, for example, for let's say day, I can move at example, actually, if I over here, you can have details of this future execution. So we have the workflow name, the buckets, the average execution time, the minimal execution time, and the maximum execution time that were calculated based on previous executions. So we can zoom in, zoom out using this widgets, and also we can search for a specific. If you have like many calendars, we can search for a specific one. If I check in the scheduler, actually, I will have, like, I guess I have at least one execution of 1 minute. I'll refresh. Okay.
I think this is because you put too many events in the Gantt chart. 1 week for 10 minutes is too many events.
Okay. Okay, so as you can see, for example, here's my job that was triggered by job planner with the association. You can see here the submission time is like 27 seconds ago. It was run like 1 minute ago. First time 3 minutes, no, 4 minutes. Yeah, 4 minutes ago, then 3 minutes ago, as you can see here. So 2 minutes ago, 1 minute ago, and here 46 seconds ago. So it will keep running like this every 1 minute. And that's all. Do you have any questions? Did you try to add some association? I can see that some associations are added. But I guess for people that added 10 minutes, they have to wait like 10 minutes to be able to see the job executed. Maybe this one. Oh no, 41 minutes ago. It's the PCA service. Fabien, I think that's all for job running, right?
So there was a question from Philippe. The question was, as the calendar is defined inside Activeeon, how you are sure about the start time? The resources are not always available. So what I answer is that people are usually making an overall planning, taking into account the resources they have and the time each job usually lasts. I mean, the execution of previous jobs are recorded in the database, and so it gives some insight about the planning in the future. I'm not sure if Mohamed showed the the planning for the future, but you will see the past and you will see a projection of the future based on the calendar and association. And one thing that people also do is activate the Activeeon dynamic resource management, where the resource manager that we haven't seen yet will be able to trigger based on the workload, so based on the job triggering the acquisition of resources dynamically in clouds or in a private cloud like VMware or in a public cloud. So right now the planning is not very nice on the view because there is no history and there is no precise detail about the future.
Mohamed, you can put every 1 minute to see the past execution of every 1 minute.
Yeah, add every 1 minute calendar in the view.
Delete this one or keep it?
Yeah, keep it. Keep it.
No.
Okay, here you have a better view. So you see in blue what was actually planned, and you see in green what actually happened. So this is for the past. Of course, if there is an error, you will have some indication of the error. And if we move forward a little bit to the future, Mohamed, you will see that based on historical data, you will see. You move a little bit more.
It's the maximum. This one, right? Maybe I have to change.
Okay, here we are. So move down.
Yeah.
Okay, so here you see what is actually planned for the future with the actual length of a job.
Yeah.
And when jobs are chained, you will also see the full execution with all the 10 jobs between themselves.
I have the legend here that we have different colors. The color of every execution changes according to the color actually. For example, if you don't have resource, it gets if it's pending, it's going to be yellow like this.
So people will be using this feature, for instance, to plan and to schedule the big data analytics and to integrate the various sources of data or to trigger new machine learning generation, or also to automate management of IT.
I'm done with the job planner. So next, it will be a Workflow Studio, and it will be presented by Fabien. So
Okay.
I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. All right, can everyone see my screen? Mohamed, can you see?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. So I will briefly present the studio. We will go into details with the studio and workflow design tomorrow in the hands-on session, but I will just present the interface, the web portal at the right now. So this interface is some kind of graphic integrated development environment, which allows to design workflows, to write some tasks, to write some code, to add variables, and to reuse pre-existing palettes that other people, other developers have created. So the main interface of the studio is presented like this. So on the top, you have the ability to select a preset for the studio, which is a set of palettes which are available for your field of expertise. So there we propose a small set of palettes, which is machine learning, big data, and standard. But you can, of course, customize in your installation and define the palette of you want, if you want to add this specific kind of templates, etc., etc. Underneath the preset, we have the main menu of the studio, which with drop-down menus, which allows, for example, to save a workflow, to export it as XML, to run workflow, to check its validity, to do undo, etc., etc. On the bottom, we have the button to create a new workflow or to operate on existing workflows. We can open an existing workflow, remove it, or even duplicate it. And then we have the main palette, which will be drop-down menus, which allows to drag and drop some pre-existing templates in the workflow you are trying to implement. Regarding workflow edition, once you have selected a workflow, you have basically the general properties of your workflows, which will be its name, a project name, description for your workflows, workflow variables, etc., etc. Once you have added some properties to your workflow, you will be you will have to add new tasks to your workflows, and in order to do that, you will need to drag and drop from one of the palettes tasks that need to be added. So it can be either single tasks, which are present in the task menu, or it can be even complex structures, which are present in the other palettes. Once you select a task, you have the ability to access the task detailed information and parameters. So it can be the task name, it can be a description for the task variables, or task implementation. Once you want to edit what the task is doing, you will have to click on the task implementation section, which consists on a simple text area, which can allow you to write directly some code, but which give access as well to a dedicated editor, which features syntax, highlighting, search, and many other features. In order to run your workflow, you will have to click on the submit button, or you can as well click on the check button before running it to make sure that your workflow is valid from the XML point of view. I will first present that before going Okay, so this is my menu of the studio. This is all the workflows I've created. So I can add a new workflow by clicking on the create button. I mentioned the palette in here. You can select the various palette that we have. Right. So I create my new workflow, and then which is named with a default name, and then I can open it. And in this workflow, I'm going to rename it, for example. And then I'm going to add new task. Can give it a project. So a workflow with no task is not valid. So if I click on this button here, check the validity, it will say that the workflow is not valid because it contains no task. So I'm going to add a new task, let's say Linux Bash. So I just click here in the task menu and I drag and drop one of these tasks. When I click on this task, you see that here the left panel changed. So if I click on the workflow, I have basically the global workflow property. And if I click on one task, I have the task property. So that's the name. So I can, for example, rename it. So the workflow naming is very flexible. You can use spaces in the workflow name and many characters, but the task name is very constrained, and it has to be an ID. So if I here put a space and I do check, it will say that it's invalid because it's not an ID. When I click on the task, if I go to task implementation, here I can see my task implementation. Here it's simply a print directory command, but I can of course modify this, and I can open the editor here. So the editor features syntax highlighting. I'm going simply to write a hello world. And it features as well various kinds of possibilities, such as, for example, Ctrl/ to comment out code. I can do find. There we go. And I can even, it features even autocomplete. And autocomplete is basically the ability to automatically find some keywords that we use inside ProActive. So for example, that's one start of a keyword. And here I have autocomplete with the keywords we have inside ProActive. So I'm going to save this workflow and run it. Check that it's valid. Yeah. And I'm going to submit it. So now when I submit, it says that the workflow was submitted with ID 5244. And that's my workflow execution, like you've seen before in the scheduling portal, and with the output, which I printed out in the echo comment. So I go back to the training. So using the studio, it's also possible to publish a workflow to the catalog. Of course, this is a very important feature, as most of our other portals use the catalog extensively. So a designer is able thus to publish the workflow it's currently working on to the catalog. It as well able to get a workflow from the catalog, for example, to modify it and republish it. So this is a functionality, this is a model view which is opened when we publish a workflow to the catalog. So it gives you the possibility to select a bucket, and then it will create a new workflow or edit an existing workflow based on your workflow name. You will be allowed to define a kind for the workflow. So by default, it's workflow standard. And it will give you the ability to write a commit message. In general, workflows are represented in XML format, and the Studio Portal gives the ability to export the workflow you are working on to XML and download it locally to your computer, or the inverse operation to import an existing XML workflow from your computer to the studio. So I'm going to demonstrate all this. Sorry. So this is my workflow. I'm going to publish it to the catalog first, but I'm going to publish it in a dedicated bucket that I'm creating. So I create a new bucket. I call that training. HPP training. And then I go to the catalog menu and I do publish current workflow to the catalog. From the list of buckets, I select the bucket I've just created. It says you are about to publish a new workflow named test workflow to this bucket. So I'm writing a commit message and click on publish. So now in my HP training, I have this workflow created. So I can see various information regarding the workflow I just published. So it's possible as well to publish a new version. So suppose, for example, I modify my workflow. I do catalog, publish current workflow to the catalog. I select my bucket. And here it says you are about to add a new version of the existing test workflow to the bucket. It shows the last commit time and commit message. I'll put V2. And now in the catalog, if I click on my workflow and open the revision list, I can see the 2 revisions of this one. Finally, the possibility to export a workflow as XML is accessible through the file menu. So if I click on file and I do export, this will present the workflow in XML format, which gives me the possibility to download locally on my computer. And I have, of course, the opposite possibility. Suppose now I clear my workflow from the edit menu. I can do file, import as current workflow. I go to download. I select my test workflow XML file. And here I find the workflow that I exported. So this is a very brief introduction to the studio. Do you have? We are not going to go in details to the studio today. This is going to be tomorrow. Do you have any questions regarding the studio? I know that some people are not able to put on their microphones, so I will probably look at the chat if I can manage to access it.
There is no questions yet.
Okay, okay. All right, so that's it for the studio. I'm going to present now the resource manager, and that's going to be the last session for today. So the resource manager portal is a web interface which allows to monitor your infrastructure. So it's mostly used by admin users, but can as well be used for a standard user which want to see how their currently running workflow is being processed and deployed on the infrastructure. So the resource manager portal is composed of 4 sections. On the top left, you have the list of what we call in ProActive node sources. So it's a tree view where you can see for each node sources the number of the individual hosts connected to this node source and the individual for each host the individual ProActive node connected. So a node source is basically a group of resources. For example, when we're managing a Slurm cluster via metascheduling, Slurm will appear as a dedicated node source. When we have local ProActive nodes running tasks, local ProActive node will be another node source. If we have a cloud type of instances, that will be a third type of node source. And regarding the host, so you can see here that there are multiple ProActive nodes, which are the green disk connected to a single host. This is because we are able to run multiple workflow tasks in parallel. So suppose that your machine has, let's say, 12 cores. You have the ability to deploy, for example, 12 ProActive nodes to run 12 ProActive workflow tasks in parallel. On the top right side, you have a similar view, but this time in a grid fashion, where you can monitor in a direct way all your infrastructure visually. On the top left, sorry, on the bottom left, when you select a node source or host, you can have detailed information about this host. You can have access eventually to a script console only for admin, and you can have access to monitoring tools to monitor, for example, the CPU, memory, or network usage. Finally, on the bottom right, you have the history and statistics of all nodes usage over time, which gives you insight on how nodes were being used at a different point of time by various proactive workflows. So I'm going to demonstrate this information. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm going to speak as well later about the possibility to add new node sources, but for now, I'm going to simply show the portal. Right. So this is a resource manager interface from the HPU training platform. So we can see that there are three kinds of node sources. The default one is empty. It doesn't contain any host or nodes. The local ones correspond to proactive nodes which are deployed locally on the server. And the Slurm node source correspond to proactive nodes which are deployed dynamically through the Slurm native scheduler. So when I select the node source, I can see the number of nodes connected. And if I select, for example, the host, I have simply the host IP and number of nodes attached to this host. If I select a proactive node here, I will have more detailed information, notably related to the Java virtual machine. So a proactive node is actually a Java virtual machine process running physically on the mentioned server. Mentioned machine. Regarding this interface, I have access here to the script console only for admin user, where I can directly run some scripts. Usually this is used only for debugging purpose. I can have access to the thread dump, which allows to get the current snapshot of threads in the current Java virtual machine, and as well the current snapshot of threads from the server. So thread dump is a debugging tool for use by Java most likely, and it is used notably by us whenever we want to track some wrong behavior and want to understand it. Finally, I have the monitoring tab. So the monitoring tab, when I select a node will show the various monitoring information about the Java virtual machine. So that can be the number of threads currently consumed by the Java virtual machine, the heap memory usage, number of classes loaded, and CPU usage. Now, if I select a host, I have the ability to this time see operating system level kind of metrics. So, for example, the memory's usage of the machine itself, the CPU, the global CPU usage of the machine, and the network activity, and the file and the disk consumption. If I go in one of these category, I can have even more detailed information. For example, on CPU, I can see here all individual core activities for this machine. If I go here, I can have information about the swap and global memory usage. On the file system, I can have various information about different mounting points. And here on the network tab, I can have various metrics regarding all available network interface on the machine. And finally, I can as well see the list of currently running processes. So that's all for the monitoring part. Regarding the node state, I can see as well, go back in history and see all usage over time of the nodes and the load history. From this portal, I have as well the possibility to add new group of resources. And this is done by clicking the Add Node Source button. In here, I can select two main, so I can name my node source. And I need to select two information. The first one is infrastructure. So it's basically this infrastructure, the infrastructure selection says how we are going to acquire this node source. How we are going to deploy nodes inside this node source. So for example, it can be a SSH deployment. It can be a deployment through an existing native scheduler, meta scheduling. It can be a deployment through cloud instances, etc., etc. I'm going to simply show you to deploy nodes locally on the server by selecting local infrastructure. Here, I'm going to select how many nodes I want to deploy. As there are many, many nodes, I'm just going to deploy 4 nodes here. And finally, in the policy, I can select here when these nodes will be deployed. So if I choose a static policy, they will be deployed once and be kept running over time. If I select restart down node policy, sorry, I didn't see it. If I select, for example, a time slot policy, I can, for example, define if nodes need to be deployed over the weekend or at night, those kind of various time kind of policy. So right now I'm going to select a static policy and deploy now. So you can see, if I go back here, that my test node source has been deployed and new nodes have appeared on the resource manager. I can modify the various settings here. So I can, for example, view the settings that I entered previously by right-clicking and doing update dynamic parameters. And if I want to change the settings, what I can do is undeploy. Edit node source. And for example, change the number of nodes here and deploy here. Here we go. That's it for the resource manager. Do you have any question? I just want to demonstrate a full kind of activity so you can see how the proactive scheduler can scale. So I'm going to run a workflow for that.
We have some questions, Fabien, regarding the resource manager.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately,
so a question I didn't understand, what is the purpose of these GVMs?
All right, sorry. I don't know why I have lost my the chat. Sorry. Okay, got it here. So what is the purpose?
You launch the workflow in the meantime while we answer the questions, sure. So people will be able to see.
So this Java virtual machine, they are the placeholder for ProActive. They are used by ProActive to be able to execute ProActive workflow tasks and to be able to execute workflow tasks in various kind of languages. Does that answer the question? So I'm going to submit a workflow. Here you can see that. So it's just a workflow which submit many tasks, which each wait for 2 minutes. So you can see that all nodes here appeared as busy because they are running all these tasks. You can see in here that all tasks are running. And I even going to schedule a workflow on the cloud infrastructure, on the Slurm infrastructure.
So previously we were using static nodes that were available readily on the resource manager, and now Fabien will launch tasks that will go specifically execute onto the Slurm scheduler in a meta scheduling mode. So this is
a feature I'm going to
work with a Slurm scheduler.
Yeah, this is a feature I'm going to develop tomorrow during the hands-on session. So you can see here when this is meta scheduling, basically proactive nodes are dynamically deployed to execute proactive workflow tasks. And they are,
we can show the needed nodes.
And yeah, I can see here that the number of nodes increased, and we are at a state where we are needing some nodes because of dynamic deployment, and the workflow as submitted has more tasks than currently available nodes in the platform.
So the resource manager can be configured only to use Slurm resources in case of an installation where we are only acting as a meta scheduler, but it can also be installed and configured to be used in a hybrid mode with some local machine, physical or virtual, with some cluster and with some Slurm or some resources in various kind of clouds.
Okay, just to answer the question, do all tasks, including those download Python tasks which require several gigabytes of memory, run in the JVM? Not necessarily. Basically, when a task is run, so we have I would say you have the Java virtual machine containing the proactive node, and from this proactive node, there will be the possibility to run the task itself, which possibly consume several gigabytes, either in a dedicated virtual machine or simply in a dedicated process. So we can have many controls in how the task is being executed, especially for tasks which are memory intensive. Does that answer the question from Idris?
Question, Jérôme speaking.
Hello.
So let's say that my backend, my compute backend for CPU and GPU is Kubernetes. When you want to run, or you consider that the meta scheduler is Kubernetes or the meta scheduler is Activeeon?
Activeeon acts as a meta scheduler and Kubernetes acts as a backend. So
okay.
for example, we can define here in the node source list, we have a Kubernetes infrastructure, which allows to dynamically deploy proactive nodes through Kubernetes. The idea is always to deploy proactive nodes, either on cloud instances, on Slurm, on Kubernetes. The idea is always to deploy a proactive node. This allows to run proactive tasks and proactive workflows.
Okay, so the proactive node, the Activeeon proactive node, acts as an abstraction layer in order to execute whatever task, and those nodes are written in Java.
And those nodes are written in Java.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is because we have, we offer the ability to run many kind of languages. So it's all packed in a set of libraries in Java we are using.
Okay.
But sometimes from the proactive node itself, we run external process. When, for example, when we run CPython task here, we actually run the Python command, but we run it in a controlled environment in the way it's implemented inside proactive.
Are you using Quarkus?
Sorry?
Are you using Quarkus? Okay, this is in order to have a very efficient Java container, but
okay, I didn't know, but worth.
this is from Red Hat IBM stuff, but okay.
All right, so it's a specific JVM.
Yeah.
Implementation. I mean, normally, if it's matched the Java 8 specification, we should be able to run ProActive Node on Quarkus.
Okay.
Normally. Any other question?
So to answer Remy, it's only within the context of a user job that a JVM will be started to execute to spawn the task on the Slurm node. By no means there will be a ProActive node running on all the node of the cluster.
It's only when the task is executed that the node is started, and the node is terminated when the task is finished.
And it's executed in the user context. Fabien, in the slide, we have the very last slide, which is the schedule of the next 2 sessions.
Mm-hmm. Maybe you can detail, Denis?
Okay, so just to mention the rest of the schedule. So tomorrow morning, there will be some practical session about the general use of the platform. And then tomorrow afternoon, there will be a full session dedicated to AI with example of machine learning, deep learning, AutoML, visualization and interfaces with the traditional data scientist tools like Python, Jupyter Lab, and Jupyter Kernel. To give a preview, maybe you can run the AutoML workflow on the cluster, Fabien? Well, you can run it from the automation dashboard. I think it will be better. Well, go in the automation dashboard. Workflow automation. Yeah. So people can use the AutoML directly from the portal, Simplify portal. So here you will just launch a workflow that will do optimization. So don't be shy and put a bit more parallel execution. And use the maybe put 100 or 200 here. So here you control the number of parallel tasks and use a random tuning algorithm. Here you have a set of algorithms that you select to do the tuning of parameter and hyperparameter. So click on bias and select random, which is the fastest. And here you could execute. Okay. And in that case, you will see that there will be a task automatically generated to go through the space of hyperparameter in order to find the best model, for instance, and the best parameter for your model to be efficient. So maybe you can show the visualization to see where we are. So here you see the graph of the AutoML workflow that will start many jobs in parallel. Okay. Any more quick questions?
Yes, question.
Yes.
Sorry for that. Nothing related to that, but can you install Activeeon on Kubernetes? Usually, yes. When you okay.
Yeah, we have done that. So you can have actually Activeeon running within a pod and a container in Kubernetes. I think we have some video about that on the website.
Okay, thank you.
And there's another question from Idris. Is there an accounting system in ProActive? Can you answer, Fabien? So I guess just to precise the question, by this you mean the capacity to the capacity to record all the resources which are being used by each user. So Fabien is showing right now the recording of the user. So you can select the users and all user or specific user, and you can generate some reporting by exporting all user consumption of the platform in various formats. Did you export it, Fabien? Or? So here we export it in CVS, so then you can integrate that in various reporting system to generate a report or graph about user usage. So the so the scheduler works with the option of several databases to record everything that the user are doing on the platform. And you can configure, I think Fabien will talk about that on Wednesday afternoon. You can control the housekeeping of the platform, which means that you can decide to keep the record for 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year, or whatever. And this can be used, of course, for traceability issue and reporting and billing if you want to bill your customer.
So basically, I've shown the studio and resource manager. So for me, that's all. So I don't know if people have some final questions.
If there are no more questions, let's conclude with the schedule for tomorrow. Okay.
Let's say from a developer perspective, let's say that I want to develop my, or maybe this is not the target, but my own workflow. Do I have to use your web-based editor, or can I use my own IDE in order to remotely connect to Activeeon and push the code? Or I don't know if I'm clear. Maybe this is this is not a good question because
No,
I don't know.
I think the question makes sense. The workflows are stored in an open XML format. So we have some customers which are having developed their own editor or way to define the workflow. And we also have API in various languages, allowing to build and to submit workflow directly. So for instance, you will see in tomorrow afternoon session that you can develop your workflow directly in Python and submit the workflow without leaving the Python environment. But we also have a Java interface or command line interface allowing to build or to submit workflows.
Okay.
You can also use some script reference if you have some code in GitHub or somewhere.
Yeah, the code of the workflow in task implementation, they don't have necessarily to be embedded in the XML workflow. They can as well use referencing to reference code taken from from a specific URL.
Okay.
So we can store the script, for example, in the ProActive catalog, or we can access the script externally through, let's say, a GitLab or GitHub, something like that.
Okay.
So maybe Fabien, you can show the general page of the documentation.
Yes.
Yeah, the documentation is accessible from all portals in the help menu. So if you click on help documentation, here you have the documentation for this version. So it's embedded inside the ProActive scheduler. And if you click here, you can see the user guide.
And the API, do you have a way to access your API documentation?
The API, so there are some Java doc parts inside the documentation for the Java API. So there are references to the Java doc of the Java API. For Python, I think the Python documentation is inside the Python toolbox package directly.
We have links, Fabien, in the middle, API documentation. You can access.
Yeah.
Like Swagger. Yeah. I'm thinking about Swagger, like, way of.
We have here, for example, if you are interested in the Swagger interface for all our different microservices, if you just go back to the front page here, you can access the various Swagger interface. Let's say catalog API. So that's Swagger REST API for the individual microservices that we host.
Okay.
And the Java doc I mentioned is here as well. That's the Java doc. It's for Java. Okay, so thank you everyone for the participation and the attention. I guess it's a lot of things to ingest in a single day, but thank you for your active participation and tests you've done on the platform. So for those who are interested, we will see each other tomorrow morning for the hands-on session.